Through 6 weeks of the 2023 season, the Philadelphia Eagles ranked 23rd in red zone efficiency, scoring touchdowns on just 10 of their 22 red zone trips so far. That's a far cry from their third place finish in red zone efficiency last year, when they scored touchdowns on 40 of their 59 trips. But when you look at last season, outside of touchdowns, the Eagles' red zone numbers are very similar through the first 6 weeks. Jalen has taken 30 dropbacks and is completing 44% of his red zone passes this year, compared to 31 dropbacks at a completion percentage of 46 last year. This year, he has thrown for 3 touchdowns compared to 4, and not including quarterback sneaks and kneel downs, the Eagles have utilized Jalen on 9 designed quarterback runs compared to 11 in 2022. They have handed the ball off to running backs 28 times this year for 63 yards compared to 26 for 64 yards last year. The big difference is the touchdown totals, as 7 of those rushes resulted in touchdowns a year ago compared to 2 this year, despite the Eagles giving their running backs 2 more carries inside of the 10-yard line this year. When you look at the film and how the Eagles offense operates in the red zone, the things they are doing this year really aren't all that different from last year. The first place we'll start is with the quarterback running game, because that's been the hot topic of the season. Let's look back at last season really quick. Excluding sneaks and kneel downs, the Eagles utilized quarterback runs on 11 plays in the first 6 weeks of last season compared to 9 this year. Of those 11 quarterback runs, 7 were zone read plays where Jalen kept the ball. They weren't very good at it, as they averaged 2.7 yards per carry. They ran 3 quarterback draw plays, averaging 5.7 yards per carry, and 1 quarterback sweep on the 2-yard line that went for 1 yard. Coincidentally, the Eagles' bye week was week 7, and they did some self-scouting during that period and came out with a different philosophy. I'm going to use weeks 8 through 15, as Jalen didn't play weeks 16 and 17, and if you remember week 18, the Eagles had to run Jalen out there to lock up the number 1 seed in the NFC, and they were being very cautious with him due to his shoulder injury. In weeks 8 through 15, the Eagles flipped their quarterback run game in the red zone. They ran 4 zone read plays where Jalen kept the ball for a combined -6 yards. They ran 6 quarterback draws for a combined 48 yards, and 1 quarterback sweep that went for a 2-yard touchdown. To be clear, they did run more zone read plays, but they were handed off. To counter zone reads, teams would often dedicate 2 guys to have eyes on Jalen on the backside of the zone read. 1 defender that was designated as the quarterback player and a safety. The Eagles used Jalen's gravity to hold 2 defenders, which made it easier for the Eagles' backs to operate in the condensed part of the field. The Eagles' increased use of quarterback draws didn't start all of a sudden with Brian Johnson. It started during the Eagles' bye week in late October of 2022. They have continued to hold on to that philosophy in 2023 as well, and actually the Eagles have been a little more creative with their quarterback designed runs in the red zone to start this season. They have used 5 draws, 2 zone reads, 1 quarterback bash concept, and 1 quarterback power RPO. Their zone reads are still not very effective when Jalen keeps it, as he has averaged 2 yards per carry on those runs. Now, the Eagles have used quarterback draw plays on 2 third and long situations in the red zone, and people have gotten pissed at that. So let's dive into that to get a better understanding of the philosophy. Last season, on 3rd down, with 7 to 10 yards to go, where they also had the ball on the 7 to 10 yard line, the Birds had 8 dropbacks that resulted in 3 completions on 5 attempts, with an average yards per attempt of 4.8. They scored 2 touchdowns, but also threw 1 interception and took a sack to go along with 2 scrambles for 9 yards total. The NFL average for those same scenarios included a completion percentage of 36 while averaging 2.4 yards per attempt. The touchdown to interception ratio was 2 to 1. While a ratio of 2 to 1 doesn't sound bad, on 1st and 2nd down, that ratio was 12 to 1. When teams are in 3rd and long situations within 10 yards of the goal line, there is far less space for the offense to operate in, and defenses will pack the end zone and hope the offense will throw short or try to force something. Considering the Eagles averaged 7.2 yards per carry on quarterback draw plays in the red zone last season, and is far less likely to result in a turnover, you can start to understand why they carried over this philosophy into the current season. Sirianni has continued to maintain that they feel running the ball on 3rd down is an aggressive approach. The reason why they believe it's an aggressive approach is because they are going to go for it on 4th down if they get within 4 yards of the goal line. We saw this play out against the Jets. The Eagles' use of quarterback draws on 3rd and medium to long situations was not just limited to the red zone as well, as the Eagles utilized it all over the field, but that's a topic for a different video. Just understand, if you're pissed about the quarterback draws in the red zone, take it up with Sirianni, as clearly this philosophy is coming from the top down. By far, the biggest issue for the Eagles in the red zone is execution. So let's take a look at some examples. On 3rd and 8 against against the Rams, the Eagles run a quarterback draw. The play doesn't work, but let's look at what happened. The play is designed to get Jalen the ball in space with 2 blockers in front of him and a one-on-one matchup with a cornerback, but the play breaks down almost right away. The run is supposed to go through the B gap, but Opeta doesn't do a very good job of sealing the defensive tackle. Yes, I know it's Aaron Donald, but Opeta doesn't maintain his leverage, drifting too far inside. Gainwell can't advance up the field to block the safety because he has to secure the first level with the defender running free, and he ends up missing the block anyway. AJ doesn't give much effort on his block, so now there's 3 unblocked defenders pursuing Jalen. Say what you want about the play calling, but the execution was horrendous. It's a very similar situation and play call to the Colts' game-winning play from last year, but that doesn't matter when you get the kind of effort we see on this play. Let's look at another series of plays. Against the Commanders, the Eagles are running a variation of the popular stick concept called shock, where the tight end runs a stick route, their number 1 receiver runs a hitch to occupy the flat, and the slot receiver runs a slot fade. It was a very popular and effective call for the Eagles last year. On this play, the Commanders are sending the house with the cover 0 blitz. Jalen recognizes this and brings Kenny Gainwell into block, but somewhere the protection gets messed up. The Eagles use a 3-man slide to the left, so those 3 defenders are accounted for, with Opeta and Lane locking onto the defensive tackle and end to their side. From the outside looking in, Gainwell should be responsible for the linebacker blitzing to the right, but he check releases to the left and doesn't pick up the linebacker. Goddard doesn't recognize the blitz and takes his time getting out of his break, and Jalen doesn't have time to wait for him. Goddard needs to speed up his process against the 0 blitz. On the next play, the Eagles run a play they had a lot of success with last year. A tailback swing, a quarterback draw, RPO. The Eagles have the numbers advantage to run, but the Commanders run a stunt to the play side, and Mailata and Dickerson struggle to pick it up, giving Jalen nowhere to run. Let's flash back to last season. The Eagles run a quarterback draw on 3rd and 5. The Colts stunt, just like we saw against the Commanders, but this time it gets picked up and Jalen runs for 7 yards. Back to this season. The next play, the Eagles run an outside zone RPO on 3rd and 11, and it gets stuffed. In regards to play calling, this is the play I took the most issue with. The Eagles did use this same exact play to convert on 3rd and 6 during their first touchdown drive, but I felt this was a tough call to make on 3rd and 11. I feel like the Eagles probably would have gone for it if it was 4th and 4 or something like that, but with the Commanders showing pre-snap a strong indication that they were going to blitz, I think this is a play that Jalen would have checked out of. Space becomes condensed in the red zone, but if a team blitzes, they are taking a defender out of coverage and opening up more space. If you can see a blitz coming, there's a great opportunity to get into a play call to take advantage of that extra space. But in all, this drive was ended because of bad execution on the first 2 plays. Against the Buccaneers, the Eagles have a first down on the Buccaneers' 13-yard line. The Eagles run a concept known as Hank, where they run a curl flat to the outside along with the route that settles over the ball. It's a concept designed to get an easy, high-percentage throw. However, Jalen is a little off target with his throw, and while it's not the best placement, it's still a ball that Jack Stahl should have caught. With the Eagles facing 2nd and long, they want to make sure they get yards so they're not facing 3rd and 10 from the 13-yard line. So to avoid that situation, the Eagles want to run a play where they have a good chance of picking up around 5 yards. They call a split zone RPO, where they can run the ball if they have a numbers advantage or throw it if they don't. They pick up 4 yards, but get an ineligible man downfield penalty. Now facing 2nd and 15, they again want to pick up enough yards to make it a 3rd and manageable situation. The Eagles run one of their bread and butter plays, which is this smash variation, but Goddard and Jalen aren't on the same page. With the blitz coming, Jalen wants Goddard to settle his route down sooner, so he's not running himself into a defender, but he doesn't, and the pass falls incomplete. Converting on 3rd and 15 from the 18-yard line is a damn near impossible task. Again, execution is what ends the drive. Let's look to another series against the Bucs. It's first down from the 6-yard line. The Buccaneers are in man coverage, and the Eagles run a slant with Devontae and an out with AJ, creating traffic for Devontae's defender to run through. Smitty is wide open, but Jalen turns down the easy throw and instead takes a harder throw to AJ. It's still great ball placement, but AJ drops it. If you remember back to this game, it seemed like the Eagles were desperately trying to get AJ a touchdown. The easy throw was there to make, but it felt like Jalen made up his mind pre-snap where he was gonna go. A Gainwell run gets them down to the 2-yard line before the Eagles run a fake quarterback sneak pop pass. When Jalen takes a snap, he drops back and has Goddard open, but for some reason, he decides to abort the play and ends up tripping. Even if Goddard wasn't open, he's 6'5", and Antoine Winfield Jr. is 5'9". Even if he's covered, he's open in that situation. Throw the ball up. But regardless, the plays were there to be made, the Eagles just need to make them. Jalen's interception against the Rams is another good play call. They get AJ one-on-one doing what he does best. You take that every day and twice on Sundays. It's just a miscommunication between Jalen and AJ. AJ thinks he can get a step on the receiver and wants the ball put out in front of him. Jalen sees the defender in a stack technique on top of AJ early, so he thinks this should be a back shoulder. This play is really a good learning moment for the two. They need to have an understanding earlier in the route how they want it to play out. By a certain point in the route, they need to have an agreement that if the corner is in a stack position, that it's going to be a back shoulder, and if he's in a trail position, then it'll be a go ball. On this play, AJ does get on top of the corner late, but the defender has leverage on top of him for most of the route. I thought this was one where it should have been a back shoulder, but regardless, this play gets our best receiver a deep shot against one-on-one coverage. I'll take it. I'll use another example, and this highlights other issues as well. The Eagles are in a trips formation again, but this time they have AJ lined up as a single receiver. This is great because you either get AJ a one-on-one scenario, or the defense will keep a safety to AJ's side, which helps open up space to the trip side. To the trip side, the Rams are running a cover 4 variation, often referred to as stubby. What this means is that the corner is going to take the number 1 receiver man-to-man, and the nickel is going to take the number 2 receiver man-to-man on anything to the flat or vertical. If he goes inside like what happens here, then he will zone up his coverage and look to squeeze the number 3 receiver or help on the number 1 coming inside. The safety will take away number 3 vertical or look to help on number 2 if number 3 doesn't go vertical, while the middle linebacker carries the release of number 3 until he can pass him off to the safety behind him. The Eagles know what the Rams like to do in the red zone and against trips formations, and they have a good play design to take advantage of the defense's rules. The Eagles are running a levels concept, where Goddard is running a deep end, while Quez and Devontae run shallow in routes. Goddard's route is really a clear out route for Quez underneath, and he is open, but Jalen doesn't even look at him. He's staring down Devontae the whole time, but the nickel sits in the throwing window after Quez releases inside. Here's the thing, the play design against this coverage is good, but if Jalen isn't going to trust Quez in this situation, then Quez shouldn't be in the game here. At the same time, I think it also speaks to the fact that Jalen has a tendency to favor certain players instead of taking what the defense is going to give him. I understand why, considering how good AJ and Devontae are, but their gravity draws the attention of other defenders, especially in the red zone when things are condensed. And before you start saying, well, Quez would have dropped it, Quez has 2 drops to 83 receptions over the past 3 seasons. Since 2021, his drop rate of 2.4% is the lowest on the team. Either pull the trigger to Quez when the play is wide open and designed to go to him, or switch out the personnel. I'll touch on one more play about execution. It's 3rd and 1, and the Eagles come out with everyone tight to the line of scrimmage, and considering how good the Eagles are at running the ball, everyone in the house thinks it's going to be a run. Knowing they're going for it on 4th down if they don't convert, Brian Johnson dials up a play-action bootleg and gets multiple people wide open. The corner to the play side bites on the run, leaving OZ open. I understand Jalen is reading the progression short to deep, but he's got to be quicker on the read. He eventually pulls the trigger to OZ, but he leaves the ball behind him. This probably should have been pass interference, but if this ball was placed closer to the back pylon where OZ can run under it, then it's not even an issue. Devontae was also running uncovered, and so was Britton Covey to a lesser degree. I'm not going to harp on Jalen not throwing the ball to them as OZ was open, but faster timing and better ball placement leads to a touchdown. The next play, the Eagles run Gainwell on a 4th and 1, and he ends up losing a yard, and that brings me to my final topic of the red zone discussion, and that's the Swift and Gainwell debate. I'm not going to hold this play too hard against Gainwell. Does Swift get the first? Maybe, but honestly, I'm not expecting either guy to get the first when there's 2 unblocked defenders waiting for them. Again, to me, that comes down to personnel usage. The Eagles need to utilize a bigger back for short yardage situations. But the Gainwell and Swift usage was a hot topic this past week, with a prominent voice in the Eagles community putting out this tweet showing the disparity in usage versus production. I'm not here to say Gainwell is better than Swift. He's definitely not. Swift's ability allows him to turn nothing into something and turn medium gains into big plays more consistently than Gainwell. And there's a reason why the first video I ever released was about Zach Charbonnet, and I touched a little on Kenny's history with the Eagles. I think Kenny is a solid back that's a better pass protector than Swift and is reliable in the passing game, so he's going to get snaps. Gainwell also converted 4 of his 16 red zone carries for touchdowns last season. That 25% clip was best on the team outside of Jalen's quarterback sneaks, so I'm not sure why people all of a sudden think the Eagles can't score just because Gainwell gets touches. But this tweet doesn't provide much context to these situations and ignores the majority of the Eagles' issues in the red zone so far, and overall, there's a feeling that Gainwell is stealing a lot of touches from Swift in the red zone. So let's look at it. Swift and Gainwell both have 13 carries in the red zone. 4 of Gainwell's carries have come in situations where the Eagles are clearly trying to run out the clock, while 0 of Swift's 13 carries have come in this situation. Of Gainwell's 9 red zone carries, where they weren't trying to run the game out, 3 of those red zone carries came in week 1 when the Eagles decided to hardly use Swift. Swift. Let's look at those 6 other red zone carries Gainwell got. One was a 3rd and 11 run against the Commanders, his only carry of that drive. I don't think that's fair to say that because Gainwell got a touch that the Eagles didn't score a touchdown there. Another carry was a 2nd down carry that was sandwiched between the A.J. Brown drop and Jalen aborted quarterback sneak. I don't think Swift would have scored on the carry that Gainwell had, and that was Gainwell's only carry on the drive. The Eagles were also up 19 in the 4th quarter. I didn't count this as one of those milk the clock carries. Again, I wouldn't blame Gainwell for this not being a touchdown drive. In the Rams game, the Eagles ran Gainwell on 3 non-clock killing plays. The first was a 3rd and 2 situation which he converted. The next play, Lane and Sua don't execute their combo, leading to an unblocked player on one side, while Kelsey gets stood up and knocked back by the nose, and the frontside defensive linemen all have locked out and protected their gaps. Still, Gainwell runs hard and gets 3 yards out of nothing. The next 2 plays are incomplete passes, one of which was a play where we discussed about Jalen not targeting Quez. Again, I don't think Swift makes much of a difference here, and I don't think the blame for the Eagles not scoring should be on Gainwell. The next red zone drive, Kenny gets 1 touch on 2nd and 10, and Kelsey gets knocked back into the backfield, and Gainwell trips over him. The next play, the Eagles run the quarterback draw we talked about. Again, is that on Gainwell for not scoring? The one other carry he had was a 4th and 1 carry that we talked about. I didn't look at any of these plays and think to myself that Gainwell is the reason the Eagles aren't scoring in the red zone. Furthermore, since week 3, when both Swift and Gainwell have been involved, Swift has taken 5 carries inside of 10 yards, while Gainwell has taken 2. One carry was when the Eagles were up 19, and the other was at the 10 when Kelsey tripped up Gainwell. Gainwell isn't eating into Swift's important red zone carries as much as you think. Gainwell is being used much more on 2nd and 3rd and long situations than Swift, while Swift takes the majority of 1st down and 2nd and medium or less situations. Essentially, Gainwell plays more on passing situations, but that's not to say that Gainwell is being used more in the passing game. Swift has played on more passing snaps in the red zone, and his usage is more creative than Gainwell's. The Eagles have drawn up plays specifically for him, and he has 3 catches to Kenny's 0, with another just outside the red zone. Gainwell is mainly used as a pass blocker that will check down if able, and he doesn't get passing plays drawn up for him. Furthermore, Swift has played on more RPO plays that have resulted in a pass than Gainwell has. Those very easily could have been more carries for Swift. I do think the Eagles should give Swift more non-RPO carries inside of the red zone, but it's not as if the Eagles are really giving a lot of touches away to Gainwell in close and important situations. Many of these carries are reducing Swift's workload in situations where the Eagles are up multiple possessions late in games. Considering Swift has a lengthy injury history and he's already on pace to shatter his career high in touches, it's smart to limit some of those touches. No back is going to take 100% of the red zone carries. I would look for the Eagles to give Swift 60 to 70% of the red zone carries, with Kenny and Boston splitting the remaining 30 to 40%. But to boil down the Eagles' red zone struggles to Swift Gainwell touch breakdown is simplistic and doesn't actually address what the issues are, especially on such a small sample size and when using false narratives. Overall, the Eagles' red zone offense really isn't as bad as the numbers look. The majority of their issues have come from a lack of execution, but considering how talented this team is and how well they execute in almost every phase of the game, a red zone explosion isn't far off.